we're going to do some leather bindings with ShrinkWrap and Subdivision and extrusion. So here I have my base mesh. This could be anything. This could be the handle of your bottle. This could be the neck of a bottle. This could be the handle of a weapon, whatever. I'm using a sword model here in this case. The general principle is to use ShrinkWrap to turn cylinders, fairly low poly cylinders, into strips of leather that wrap around the handle. The trick here is that we're going to build up multiple layers, combine those layers with the base mesh, and that's going to allow us to build up a realistic look rather than just like a few which clip through each other. We want to build them up so they overlay on top of each other and they don't intersect. So one thing we want to make sure is that we have enough divisions. In this case, I've gone with 12. 12 seems like a good number for this kind of, it's like a four-sided shape, but it's got many actual sides, which means we have a lot of different vertex normal or face normal variation. If we go to display, polygons, face normals, you can see the direction all those faces are pointing. The cool thing about this is that when we use ShrinkWrap, we're going to be wrapping to those directions. So I'll show you that in just a sec. Let's turn that display off. So making the wrap, I'm going to go really simple, 12 sides, but I do want to have a division in the middle because as we start building up layers, we're going to want these to deform over each other and overlap, and they need some divisions to do that. We could even do 3 divisions. If we do 3 divisions with a fraction of 0.3333, whatever, they're evenly spaced. So let's go with that. And I'm going to duplicate this so I always have a backup to use. So the first step is going to be arranging a bunch of these. And I'm just going to randomly rotate them, spin them around, change the angle. I'm not going to change the scale, but let's start with 3. We want to make sure that they're not actually going to overlap each other because we're going to build up the second layer to overlap. So then we select one of these meshes and the handle in that order. Mesh the wrapping first, then the handle. Then we go to deform, ShrinkWrap. If we set the settings back to default, the one thing you need to change is the projection mode to vertex normals. That means it's going to mimic the direction of the faces that it sticks to. You'll get a weird result if you leave this on towards inner objects. So pick vertex normals, hit apply, and you should get a really nice conforming of this mesh to the other mesh, right? So I'm going to do the same operation for all of these just by selecting them in order and pressing G. Then what we want to do is grab all of the strips. If we try and move them now, you'll notice they stick to the surface, which is really cool. It's like a light surface. So you can use that to adjust them, but it also means you can't move them off the surface. What we're then going to do is delete history, freeze transformation so they no longer stick to the surface. Control+E to extrude, give them a bit of thickness. We want to use local translate because the normals are kind of messed up on these faces because of the way they've been snapped to the faces below them. If we use thickness, you'll notice we get all this weirdness. So use local translate, pick a value. In my case, I think I'm going to use 1 for all of my parts. And then we're going to subdivide them so they grip to the surface. Some of these need a little bit of scaling just so they don't stick. Clip through, sorry. One thing I might do next time is add a little offset. But this shouldn't matter because we're going to add more layers on top of this, so we're not going to see those edges. So here's the key thing. We're then going to go modify, convert smooth mesh preview to polygons for all of these. And we could combine them first and then do that. We'll do it like this. Just going to go to Poly Smooth Face and set the subdivisions down to 1. We don't need so much density. And then I'm going to combine these together. So now this is our new base mesh. When we add another layer of these, it's going to conform to these faces, but also these faces, right? So we're going to start building up some layers. So we can start arranging a few more of these and scale them down a little bit. Same thing again. Deform, ShrinkWrap. I'm going to set a tiny offset. Let's see what 0.2 looks like. In fact, we may be able to do that in the attribute editor to test. ShrinkWrap. Offset, there we go, okay. So I'm going to leave an offset of 0.5, I think that's enough. I'm going to apply that inside the ShrinkWrap options. So now every ShrinkWrap we do should have the same offset. That's just raising it up off the mesh by 0.5 units. Let's select everything, deselect the sword, delete history, freeze transformations, mesh, combine. Extrude. I believe we used a thickness of 1 last time, so let's do the same thing again. But we actually want to do that in local translate, let's not forget. 1, and then we subdivide. So now you can start to see what's happening, right? We're building up these layers. We still have that problem there, so we need to make sure we cover that one up. There's a few places where we need to tweak it, but we have kept doing this before we convert to polygons means we can just gently tweak any parts we see clipping. That seems to be the only place. That 0.5 offset has really helped. So I'm going to do modify, convert smooth mesh preview to polygons. It makes more sense to combine them and do it all as one. Then I can just go into my poly smooth face node, set the subdivisions to 1, mesh, combine. Okay. And we're just going to rinse and repeat. So probably only one more layer is needed. Cover up this one. Cover up this one. This one's going to be a bit tricky. And this one up here as well. What we can do if it's not working is we can remove, like separate these parts so that they don't get, the ShrinkWrap doesn't get caught on them. But first let's try this. Deform, ShrinkWrap, looks good. Yeah, we got this error here, so let's undo that one. Let's undo that one. I'm going to separate this piece. And I'm going to separate this piece. I'm going to hide both of these. Deform, ShrinkWrap, much better. We'll just clean up a bit inside there. And same on this one, we'll just get rid of this. So let's delete history. And we should be able to move this. Just inverted my selection. Okay. Mesh, combine. Mesh display, soften edge. Delete history, freeze transformations, extrude. 1 in local translate. And subdivide. Anywhere we need to change anything. On these ones we can scale these parts in if we want a more kind of stylized look. Smoothness preview to polygons. What have I done to the rest of the sword? I must have accidentally deleted it. Whatever, it's not important. All I need to do is make these parts gold again. And there is our wrapping. So let's combine all this. Oh, actually, what we've been doing is going into the attribute editor and going to I deleted the history. Go back to polysmooth face. So I need to undo till before I deleted the history. Modify, convert smoothness preview to polygons. Polysmooth face, subdivision level to 1. Mesh, combine. So that is our wrappings fully done. Something like that. To retopo these, so I will, I guess, do a quick demo of that. Let's delete the rest of the handle. Just work on this part as if this was the one bit of the mesh we were going to do. I would either quad draw it, so we could do live surface, go to our modeling toolkit. So my approach for this is that it's going to be really quick to just extrude the entire edge loop if we get a nice base loop to work with, right? So this loop here, doing around the first kind of strap, is going to be the base. I'm going to just add extra divisions in as we need them. Oopsie. Okay, something like that. This one probably needs another loop as well. Okay, and then we remember tab plus middle mouse should extrude the whole loop. Gonna have to do some scaling to get this looking correct. In fact, you could even use ShrinkWrap to retopo this. I turn off live surface, scale this up. That's pretty good, actually. We use ShrinkWrap to make the high and ShrinkWrap to make the low. I believe we can actually dynamically move. Yeah, we can move the edges along the face. I don't know what happens when you add loops in. I guess that's not really compatible. So we want one kind of at the lower point, and then we want to just pinpoint sort of the high parts of the mesh, like here and here. That could very well be our low poly. So mesh display, soften edge, quickly do a UV for it. My UV window's on the other monitor, but it's nothing special. I'm just gonna open this up into one long piece. I'm going to try and straighten this. Pretty good. The reason why I want this straight is that if we're going to apply like cloth fibers to the thing, you want to make sure that it's facing all the same way, so the cloth fibers run across it. So the UV is really basic. Let's test out baking this. Okay. We're going to talk through all that Substance Painter stuff next week, so just demonstrating how this is going to work. Don't worry if you don't know. Oh, weird. Those other parts are still on there. Oh, they're just hidden. Ah, okay. They're in a hide face data set. One thing I hadn't done was deleted history. it was still combined, like relying on the high poly. So now I'm going to re-export. Weird. There we go. That's the correct low poly. Make mesh maps, 2K, no ID map. Browse to the high. Distance up a little tiny bit. So we have some baking errors. We need a little bit more distance. And we get a result like that. So if I grab a leather material, throw it on. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what you can do with that technique. Obviously, these straps don't actually go all the way around. It's not like one strip of leather that's been bound all the way around, but it's very hard to tell that when you see this as a 3D model, right? You don't know whether it's one piece or whether it's many rings, because you can never follow one all the way around the mesh. Maybe if it was like a sword and you could see it spinning like this in front of you, you might see that it wasn't a real spiral. And whilst it might be possible to do a real spiral if you're really careful and you did it piece by piece and then like attached all the edges together, this effect looks as good as you're going to need. So why bother with anything else? So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. That's how you can make easy leather bindings in Maya using ShrinkWrap. Obviously, if this is kind of stylized because we have these quite big chunky straps for demonstration purposes, but if you wanted it to be more realistic, more of these and smaller and less extruded, less thick, it's going to give you a less stylized result. I think I've showed you the Chinese sword that I did in class, which has the same thing, but it's just got a lot more straps and they're not as extruded quite as far. Also, maybe this offset was a little bit high because we're seeing some gaps in between there. But obviously, that's up to your artistic. It's an artistic choice you get to make. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful.